And for more reaction to the economic update, let's now bring in our panel of experts from Calgary. We have Brett Wilson, chairman of Canoe Financial. Thank you, Brett, for being here, as always. And also from Calgary, we have Goldy Hyder, president and CEO of the Business Council of Canada. And standing by for us in Ottawa is Perrin Beatty, president and CEO of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to you all, and thank you so much for joining us as we continue to look at this fall fiscal update. Brett, let me start with you, because it does seem as though there was a bit of an absence of mention of Alberta and the energy patch and the huge discount between WTI and Western Canadian Select. Your reaction?
Well, let's start with what was offered to Alberta. Nothing. It's a waste of breath and a waste of paper. The thought that they're going to put an accelerated depreciation schedule in place for the rest of Canada to benefit from. There are no earnings, there are no profits in Calgary. There's 2 or 3 refiners that are killing it right now, but let's not pretend they were directing the accelerated write-off to them. There is no benefit to Alberta. And in fact, there's a further dig. They talk about, and let me read if you don't mind, an export diversification strategy aimed at increasing Canada's overseas exports by 50% by 2025. One pipeline and we'd be there. They can't get their mind around the fact that energy is a critical element of Canada and its future.
Perrin, let me turn to you in terms of your reaction.
That would be my great concern in terms of what isn't there, that there should have been specific reference to the situation we're facing in our energy sector and a commitment to get our resources to market. I'm disappointed as well that there isn't a clear strategy to bring the books back into balance. But there are other elements that are positive. The accelerated write-offs go beyond what were anticipated. And the other area where there's real progress that's being made is in terms of regulatory reform. The government has accepted a number of the recommendations that we made to them earlier in the year in our report on regulation, and that should make a substantial difference. The other thing I would have liked to have seen as it relates to oil and gas is certainly a clear indication that they're determined to fix the regulatory system as it relates to getting major capital projects moving and in the ground.
So no indication of that? You're not hopeful at all that we will have new projects, new pipelines built on the back of what we've learned today?
I'm hopeful. The Prime Minister is scheduled to go to Calgary, and I'm assuming you don't send the Prime Minister there to have nothing to say. So we'll be looking to see what he has to say upon arrival and hopeful on that. But the government needs to recognize the fact that Western Canada is hurting, it's hurting badly, and that we need, as something that's important for all of our country, to get our resources to market on an urgent basis.
Brett, I can hear that you're chuckling in the background, on the back of Perrin's comments, expecting that the Prime Minister is going to say something, deliver something to you tomorrow. But let me just turn to Goldy for 1 second here. But I'm right, though, right?
Okay.
Okay. Goldy,
yep.
what's your reaction, Goldy?
Bring it.
Well, look, let me add to what Brett and Perrin said, but to take a more positive outlook, if I can. I think I was frankly pleasantly surprised. What it says to me is the government does understand what it means to be in a competitive environment globally, and that not taking any actions would have been crazy, quite frankly. But the actions that they did take, of course, it's going to dominate headlines, and people will see this as some great big, reward for business or business. The reality is, businesses are going to be able to invest in our economy. They're going to be able to invest in innovation. They're going to be able to invest in infrastructure. They're going to be able to, most importantly, create jobs. That's the fiduciary duty of the government. And next to our national security, maintaining economic sovereignty would be right up at the very top. And I think what the government has done today is recognize, on the one hand, that consumer spending is probably coming to a slowdown for obvious reasons, given the amount of debt and the rising interest rates there. They recognize that the U.S. economy cannot sustain the growth that it's having forever, and that forecasts show it's slowing down over the next few years. When that happens, we would be too late to respond at that time. I think they're getting ahead of both of those things, and they should be credited for that.
Brett, Goldy makes some good points there. What's your reaction?
I agree with Goldy for every province except Alberta. I agree with Perrin in terms of his push that they don't have any progress whatsoever on infrastructure. We're still dealing with Bill 69, which will be the end of infrastructure development in Canada as we knew it. We're adding gender diversity, we're adding upstream and downstream greenhouse gas emissions, we're adding stupidity to regulatory process. But going back to what I was laughing about, I was laughing with Perrin. As Trudeau walks off the plane, he will put his hands up and say, I'm here to deliver middle-class jobs. I'm tired of that rhetoric, I'm tired of that nonsense, and I'm tired of being constrained by what I can say on TV. But he's frustrating Alberta. He's not acknowledging what we need. And that's the solutions for the Made in Canada discount and the frustrations we face with someone standing up and saying Keystone makes sense, Saudi Arabia and foreign oil that doesn't meet our standards of environment or regulatory compliance or even the dignity of women and children. We are importing from crude we're importing crude from criminals is basically the way we would look at it. And there's no comment whatsoever. So accelerated depreciation for Alberta, so what?
Perrin,
if I can just add,
please.
if I can,
No,
sorry,
go
I
ahead.
was just going to say, as an Albertan who just happens to be in Calgary, look, I know what's going on in this province, and there's no question that there is deep concern that there doesn't appear to be a strategy for the Western economy. There's no question that there needs to be a response to what's taking place, which only begs the question that Perrin said, why would the Prime Minister be coming here tomorrow? It can't be to sell this, because there's nothing to sell on this issue in Alberta. So there clearly has to be something more, one would hope, that addresses the issue. Otherwise, I just don't understand the political calculation there whatsoever.
Perrin, let me ask you then, what do you think we will hear from Prime Minister Trudeau tomorrow if there's nothing to sell about this deal? And it's not just Alberta, it is the Western provinces. Let's talk about Manitoba. Let's talk about Saskatchewan as well. Perrin, your reaction, your thoughts?
Well, and I think that's absolutely critical for the government to understand. This is much more than an economic issue. It's an issue that goes to the very fabric of Canada itself. And what you have is a rising degree of frustration and anger in Western Canada, and a feeling that the rest of the country is being attended to, but not the West. What will be very important is for the Prime Minister to say, I've heard you, I'm listening, I understand, and we're going to act. Most importantly, there needs to be a clear commitment here that the government will take every single measure in its power to ensure that we get our resources to market as rapidly as possible. It was surprising that that wasn't in the budget. That is the sort of conspicuous hole, if you like. I hope that the Prime Minister will fill that tomorrow.
Perrin, and we've been talking a lot about that. We've been talking about that for years, and many people are now getting even more frustrated that there hasn't been action by the federal government to make this happen, that there are actions for Canada Post, there are actions for other issues, but there's not actions for one of the biggest resources that Canada has. It was suggested on my previous panel discussions that beware that we are going to see an increase of tensions between provinces, and also potentially something we haven't necessarily experienced here in Canada, which is the rise of populism, which we've of course seen in the United States and around the world. Is that something that is top of mind for you?
It is. You know, I've been through this before. I was through it at the time of the National Energy Program. And what we saw was divisions taking place in Canada that tore at the national fabric. I'm headed myself to Alberta tomorrow, and I'll be hearing from people directly about the issue. Albertans have a very strong sense of fairness and unfairness, and they don't quietly suffer when they feel they're being discriminated against. And increasingly, there's the feeling there that everybody else's problems are being attended to, but not theirs. The other point, though, I would make is that this isn't just a regional problem. This is an issue that is affecting the incomes of every Canadian and the ability of governments to generate the revenue that they need to be able to put back into health care or into education or into old age pensions or a whole range of other areas. We need to address this urgently. We need to fix the broken regulatory system, and we need to ensure that we can get our products to market.